Okay, in this problem we're given roots for a polynomial equation where x equals 1, x equals -1, and x equals 2. And we're asked to write a polynomial equation with those given roots. So we know that if x equals to 1, and if we subtract 1 on both sides, we know that x minus 1 is a factor. And also if we have x equals to -1, and if we add 1 here and 1 there, we now have that x plus 1 is a factor. And likewise, if we have x equals to 2, and if we subtract 2 on both sides of the equation, we now have that x minus 2 is a factor. And so when we multiply all those factors, we set it equal to 0. And so what we're going to do is multiply these two together first, and then take that answer and multiply that with the x minus 2. So x minus 1 times x plus 1 is going to be x squared, and then minus, if we do FOIL, the outer would be plus x, and the inner would be minus x. And of course, those will cancel out, and minus 1 times plus 1 is a minus 1. And we have all of this times the x minus 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel these two together. And so you have x squared minus 1 times x minus 2. And what we're going to do here is do a little distributive property. Multiply x squared times x, and you're going to get x cubed. The outer would be minus 2x squared, and the inner would be minus x. And the product with the last is a plus 2. So this will give us a quadratic cubic equation, and we know that the roots are 1, -1, and 2. And so at this point we have our answer here, and we can check several ways. So it's always good to be able to check this and see if your answers check out. One thing that you could do is that you could graph this on a graphing calculator, and you're going to have, here's the y-axis and here's the x-axis. You're going to have on the graph, you're going to have a -1 here, a 1 here, and a 2 there. And it looks to me like the graph of this will go through -1, 1, and 2. So it might look something like this. And so you can see there that it crosses the x-axis in those three points, which were -1 here, 1 there, and 2 there. So that's one quick way of checking. Of course, you can also check by going to the table on a calculator, and you will see that at -1, at x is 1 and x is 2 on the table, y is 0 for each one of those. And so you know that if y is 0, those are your zeros, and so those will be your zeros on the graph. Now, there's one additional thing that I would like to show you on this problem, is that this is factorable by grouping. So we can take this answer here and try to factor that out by grouping. How do I know it's factored by grouping? Well, it looks to me like the ratio here is 1 to -2, ratio of the coefficients, and over here it's -1 to 2. So we have the same ratio, so that means that we could group these two together and group those two together and factor those out. So I'm going to have x cubed minus a 2x squared as one group, plus I'm going to have a -x plus 2, and then factor a common factor in each one of those. So I need to factor this out and factor something here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out an x squared here and here. So the greatest common factor is x squared, and that'll leave me x minus 2. So a quick check, if I take x squared times x, I get the x cubed, and then x squared times the minus 2 gives me the minus 2x. So that's factored correctly. Now, since I know this is factored by grouping, I know that I should have an x minus 2 here as my group that I'm going to factor here. I know I have to have x minus 2. That simplifies the factoring because all I need here is a minus 1. Minus 1 times x gives me that one, and the minus 1 times the minus 2 gives me plus 2. So that is factored correctly. And so what we need to do is we need to factor this x minus 2 and this x minus 2. Since that's a common factor there, we're going to factor out the x minus 2 on both of those, and you're left with what? You're left with this x squared minus 1. So x squared minus 1 is the other factor. So this is factored correctly so far. Is there anything else that we can do? Well, yes. It looks to me like this right here would be difference of squares. And so I'm going to factor x squared minus 1 as x minus 1 times x plus 1. And I have an x minus 2 there. And of course, if we set each factor equal to 0, x plus 1 equals to 0, x minus 1 is equal to 0, and the x minus 2 is equal to 0, you'll find out that x equals to 2, x equals to 1, and x equals to negative 1. Voila. It's exactly what we have up here, and you see the 3 zeros there, and we're able to check our work. Now, don't forget that you should subscribe to this channel. If you would like to see more videos like this, hit the like button and smash the button for notifications so you can hear more of these videos. Thank you very much.